The lesson today comes from the Pearls of Wisdom, volume number 43, number 1, The Victory Way of Life. A lecture given by Mark Prophet, 1969. This message, How to Overcome Adversity by Developing the Majestical Sense of Victory. The majestic sense of victory. This pearl of wisdom begins, and you have heard it said in Proverbs 23, verse 7, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Yet the full meaning of this proverb is not realized by man until he begins to increase his potential and fulfill himself to the best of his ability. Recognizing that everyone on earth has a different capacity for service or for the use of the law, we'll call that a realization in objectivity. Although we should maintain our objectivity, all should recognize in their own personal world that wherever they are, they could be a great deal further ahead than they are, because they are not yet fully self-realized people. Now, as our Webster's Dictionary defines objectivity, and it defines it as limited to a certain amount of choice or fixed alternatives, which reduces the subjective factors to a minimum. And end of quote at Webster's Dictionary. Now, in simple words, it is to maintain focus, to bring into focus. Focusing is important. Whatever you want from God, unless you go after it, it will not come to you. So this, giving end of quote from this pearl. So this means we have to say no to some things and yes to others. And each one of us does this objectively. And returning back to this pearl. This is the one thing that you should remember. And since all life has problems, overcoming these problems is one of the things that we have to do in order to maintain our mastery. And this sometimes comes to us in increments over time. Now, what role does a majestic sense of victory play here? Well, a great deal. Because as we think, as we read in as dear Linello presented in Proverbs, that backup, as we think, so we are. Therefore, we have to recognize the potential of each individual to overcome whatever problem he has. One of the reasons we have such lingering delays in overcoming these things is because we do not have and anchor a majestic sense of victory. We have to anchor that. We have to know when those little trips and traps come to us. Whatever how small or how big, we have to maintain our sense of victory, the majestic sense of victory. The majestic sense of victory is a tangible thought creation that requires meditation by the students. Otherwise, we have to work on it, like have it in our holsters. And so that phrase, as our dear Mark Prophet is bringing forth, is a mantra in itself. And this mantra was called the Mighty Victory Mantra. For this is our Mark Prophet, our Linello speaking. For through me, mighty victory has brought this essence to you. End of quote. Now, our dear Mark Prophet states, now I am the open door to the majestic sense of victory. If each one of you would get up every morning, tune in with your presence and say, about 7 or 8 or more times, I am the majestic sense of victory. I am the majestic sense of victory. I am the majestic sense of victory. You would draw to yourself the proper feelings that would produce a miraculous state of consciousness, the consciousness of the majestic sense of victory. Here is the way you do this. And it's from the Pearl, quoting from the Pearl. First of all, you think, I am. And immediately you equate this with God as the thought form of the 6-pointed star, the 6-pointed star of victory that we had in the bulletin that was sent out. See yourself as the lower triangle in this physical plane of consciousness. God is the upper triangle in the spiritual plane. As you place the triangles together and invert the upper triangle, you have the star of victory, or the Star of David. So you say, I am. You draw your interlaced triangles. You have the first triangles with one pointed downward, showing spirit descended into matter. Then you have your lower triangle, which with its base in matter, and the apex going forward toward the Christ manifestation. In the space, in the center of these two triangles, you put the words, I am. Now, what am I? I am a majestic sense, because no ordinary sense can describe what we are talking about. We are referring to the majesty of the presence, which is the true divine right of kings. You can still accept today the kingship of your own I am presence. The scriptures that we've read, that we went along with, Revelations 5, verse 10, Thou hast made us unto our God, kings and priests, and we shall reign on earth. So to be a king and a priest unto God, you have to realize the power to overcome outer conditions and bring yourself under subjugation to your higher self. This is one of the most important efforts that we can make, because it is a road that has an end, and the end is attainment of life's victory. Now you are not going to get there by just idling along the road, as our dear Mark Prophet is going to explain to us, our dear Linello. You have a clutch on your car, and this is 1969, this Pearl of Wisdom, and some of you might not have clutches, but I'm sure you've seen them. But you have the clutch in and hold it in, and the car goes nowhere. So sometimes we hold our clutches in, as Mark Prophet says, and sometimes we hold it in and we don't go anywhere. And so we just spin our wheels, and we don't have what our dear Master Moria calls goal-fittedness. And this goal-fittedness is best explained by the wonderful way our dear Mark Prophet explains how to keep goal-fittedness. Now, when we relax and enjoy a good book or read or we take a relaxing day to the beach, we enjoy the sun and we hear the surf pound to the shore and take in the sun, and this is all very good. It is the state of mind that, quoting Mark, sometimes calls the idle mind. Now, a certain amount of idle-mindedness is perfectly permissible. It's good for the brain to rest occasionally, but don't become the kind of person who enjoys this state all the time and never understands the need to, as in our St. Peter spoke in the scriptures, our chapter 1, verse 1 through 13, gird up the loins of the mind. When you think of the loins of the mind, you must remember that the mind apparently has 4 corners to it. And our dear Mark Prophet, he held up a piece of Kleenex using it as the 4 corners for demonstration. I do not see girding up the mind as holding only one end of the mind and allowing everything else to run out, or holding onto two ends of the mind and everything still comes out to shoot, or holding up three ends of the mind where you still have a little spillway where quite a bit can go out. You've got to be able to control all four corners of the mind. You've got to be able, for they represent the four lower bodies of man. And you've got a package that is complete. And you should remember this because most people do not understand themselves. They do not realize that the mind is a tangible activity and that it can be gathered up and contained in the four corners. You have to be able to stand behind reality and life and say, I am looking for the light. I am looking for the light. The majestic sense of victory belongs to you. So, in the beauty of the light, the whole idea is to develop the majestic sense of victory. Now our dear Mark Prophet Arlenello states, end quote, I wish to assure you that it is yours. It belongs to each and every one of you. It is your sovereign right and reality. You should not think that it is the prerogative of only the messengers or the ascended masters. It is your prerogative, and you have the right to take it. But you don't have the right to display it to people in order to make them see how great you are. No, this is where we remember the words in the verse of the song, how great thou art. As in the song we heard, collectively, that's when we sang. Now, collectively and individually, our role is to glorify the God within us. And we do this. We develop the majestic sense of victory. And what a majestic sense. What a wonderful sense it is. It is the Christ sense. It is the center, and it is centered in the six-pointed star of victory. And it brings people to the realization that when they attain their victory, they will have help to do it, even though God actually does it. As in the verse, how great thou art, God actually does it, because the great tide of the universe flows only in one direction. If we cast ourselves into the mainstream of the flow, we will be carried along with it. Oh, when we're in the stream, we just let ourselves float down the stream, and it's going the right way. We will go down the river with the stream. But if we paddle, we will go even faster. Therefore, there is nothing wrong with developing a majestic sense of victory to paddle with. It becomes an attractive magnetism of the spiritual nature, which will pull out of the universe the power we need to attain our victory. Now, to better explain this, our dear Mark Prophet uses a creative storytelling in this parable. There is a parable recorded in Luke chapter 18, verse 5, parable of the unjust judge and the widow. Now, it goes like this. When the widow came to the courthouse, the judge was coming out of the door, smoking his big black cigar, and he hadn't had his breakfast. Yet, he was on his way to have a cup of coffee and to grab something to eat, and then he was going to come back and sit back on the bench. Now, the widow had seen him many times before, and they wouldn't let her in the door or into the big great courthouse. And the widow then parked her car in front of the courthouse, for she knew she couldn't talk to the judge in his office. So she decided to walk over and stand outside the courthouse until he came out. And when he came out of the courthouse, puffing his big black cigar, she went up to him and grabbed onto his coattails. Naturally, he spun around because he was conscious of his position of influence. He liked being addressed as Your Honor and didn't like the idea of someone pulling on his coattails. So he said, What do you want, madame? Unhand me. She said, I have a petition for you that I want you to sign. It is very important. I've been to you several times in front, and they won't let me in past the doors. I've written to you, and you haven't answered me. He replied, Madam, I am too busy now. Please leave me alone, or I'll have to cite you for some form of disturbance. I'll have to check it. Now leave me alone. But, Your Honor, you've got to. But he was gone. That day, she was there again when he came out. She grabbed his coattails again and followed him halfway down the street, and he was mightily annoyed. He decided that something had to be done about her, but he didn't know just what to do. Because she was such a poor widow, and he, as a great big mighty judge, didn't want to be seen by the community picking on a poor widow. She was there next day and the days and the next day and the next day after that. And she stood there every morning, very persistent. And like a thorn in his side, she was utterly tearing his heart out. Finally, he talked to himself about her and said, Though I fear not God, nor regard man, yet because this widow troubleth me, I will grant her request, lest by her continued coming she weary me, and I've got to be seen as important and not bothered. And so that's the story of the widow and the judge that our dear Mark Prophet put into his very unique, creative way. So the secret is to bother the Lord. Now, this is what the majestic sense of victory is all about. It is a recognition and an awareness. Sometimes we fall into the ravine of negative views about situations of past or current events. And in Mark Prophet's creative way of putting in his eloquent words, you have errors and piccadillies by the peck. They are all piled up in one great big heap, and you enormously think, and all of your family and friends know just how many faults you have. And then your spirit, is like a thermometer in reverse. It goes down and begins to hit bottom. So you say, Father, you know what I am really like, and you know where I need correction, because you are not biased or prejudiced. You want me to be everything you are. So will you please help me as I reach out to attain this majestic sense of victory? Now, this simple story can bring you your ascension, because sometimes you have hard-hearted people that are going to make you a target. And those slings and arrows sometimes of outrageous misfortune will come to you as long as you live, until you quit paying attention to them. And so Mark Prophet, Be the Storyteller, states, and I quote, So I thought I would pass along this story to you, because I think each one of you can use it at some time in your life. And a little story like this will stick with you and to help you over those bumps and those harsh hairpin turns. You will remember it, and you will be able to face life quite well because of it. This rings true because each one of us is each one of the embodiments of Lanello, that is of Esau, would help us. And at this point, I would like to give a little bit of background pertaining to the sense of monumental victory that our dear Lanello garnered during the embodiment of Esau and accomplished as a teller of fabulous fables. Now, I'd like to present some information that gives insight to this pearl, as it covers the essence of our Mark Prophet's use of stories throughout all of his embodiments and all of his writings. This information comes from a lecture titled Incarnations of the Immaculate Heart of Lanello. And this lecture was given in 1981 by our Elizabeth Clare Prophet and explained how the Ascended Master Lanello requested her to use the metaphor the sunflower to explain the ascended master's Linello's representation of the great central sun with the fire of Helios and its portrayal of cycles, when cycles, and those are used in embodiments also, using the circular sunflower petals to represent of the many incarnations that are necessary for us to fulfill the fullness of that causal body at that particular time. If you look into the center of the flower of the sunflower, it has many intricate parts, seeds of the light. So we remember the symbol of Eknaknin and the rays of the sun sending in the hand being you, the hand of God in action. This represents the profound understanding of God and man, and that the Shakti, or the feminine principle of God, is the active portion, so that we are in time and space doing a mighty work of victory throughout the ages, fulfilling the potential of the divine Trinity. We will focus briefly on a certain written accounts of the life and times of Aesop. The garnering of the gift, using stories. In the meaning, we say the meaning of the name Aesop, the English version, was devised from the Greek translation, which means eye's opportunity. He took the all-seeing eye of God to vanquish the foe. In the 16th century, the Greek monk Maximus Planudes wrote of the life of Aesop. Planudes compiled a collection of Aesop's fables. Planudes captured the mastery of Aesop in the written form, which was handed down to him by Socrates, because they had the oral tradition. And Aesop lived between 620 and 520 BC. And he had a certain deformity in his body, where his speech was stuttered also, and his body was somewhat contorted, and he was very short, and drew a lot of, laughing, people making fun. And so he had a hard life during that time, and he grew up in poverty. But there was a certain change that happened. And also he was be taken advantage by his co-workers at times, and because of his limitations and his physical deformities. And in written accounts, as our dear Elizabeth Clare Prophet explains, as recorded in the Aesop's life, that one day there was a change. One day, our dear Aesop, he was returning back from the fields, working very hard, and he was returning down the road, and he met two priests of Diana who had lost their way, and they commanded him in the name of Job to direct them to the back to the pathway to which they had veered off from, so that they could take them to the pathway to continue on their journey home. And in which Aesop really did. He performed wonderfully, and he refreshed them with much supplies, meat, and for which, in his kindness, he gained their good wishes as well as their prayers. So then Aesop did return back to his home in the fields, and that night he went in the barn and he fell asleep, and he lay down, and in a dream he beheld a glorious Lady Fortune standing by him, gratifying him with the volubility of language. Now, this was a grand change for him, and the ability for him to wrap his ideas and to comprehend intelligently in the form of epilogues. Well, Aesop was immediately astounded and surprised, and he jumped up and he stood and he exclaimed, "Oh, wonderful! In what a charming trance have I been! For behold, I speak fluently and can register each creature by its name. This certainly is my reward for my compliance and kindness to the holy strangers that I helped on their way." with the wonderful use of telling of fables to teach all to see the wisdom and not taking oneself too seriously by how the animals always are quick to change their course. And they are able, as the birds in the air, they make use of the air and they trust in the moment and in nature. So the active, caring side of our dear Aesop, the dear understanding, and with great voice, Aesop became a great asset to the master of the house. In business dealings, Aesop found favor in the community and teaching the children harmonious values and character building and appreciation using the wisdom of animals and nature. Now, as we learn and as we return back to this pearl of wisdom, the overcoming of adversity to victory in breaking out of this trance, breaking free out of the trance, breaking free out of the lowly, defeated trance-like attitude, recognizing that Aesop accomplishment, he brought forth this in this embodiment. He completed so much in the attaining in victory, the majestic sense of victory of our Linello. And this pearl of wisdom goes on. We have to learn about good and evil, for the power of darkness is in our world, even as the power of God or good. In other words, every one of us has the fruit of the tree of knowledge in us, and this tree is dual in nature. It tells you so. It is the knowledge of both good and evil, and that when this is where Satan gets admission into our world. We have the knowledge of evil, and we also have the knowledge of good. But what about the universe? There is no such thing as good and evil there. There is only good, and good is superior to evil. The good we are talking about is the fruit of the tree of life. It means that we do not see in terms of black and white as most people do, and don't see in even gray tones. We see only the light, the majestic sense of victory. But you're not going to get it for nothing. It's going to cost you a pretty penny. Let me tell you, as our dear Mark Prophet told us, because you have to overcome the dweller on the threshold, that side of yourself. When Jesus was talking to the same powers in himself that exist in us today, when he said in Matthew, our scripture, Matthew chapter 16, verse 23, "Get thee behind me, Satan," we have credited Jesus with manifesting the absolute perfection of life. And so he did. But in his flesh, that is to say, in the outer sense of him, there was also the potential of the world, thought, of the evil powers of the world. And because he had this power, he was tempted. And our dear Mark Prophet continues with a quick story, quoting, "I have also been tempted many times and have fallen a few times. I'll give you an example. I fell once long ago when I first learned how to change traffic lights by thought, without paying attention to the people in the street. I changed traffic lights, and as a result, I caused utter chaos at the crossing. Master Moria came to me and said, 'All right, fine. You just keep it up, and you're going to have a very sweet little karma for yourself.' I said," our dear Mark Prophet replied, "Well, you mean I can't change traffic lights anymore?" He said, "No, I didn't say that. You will have to be considered and be the policeman who looks both ways to see what's coming, and then change the traffic lights when it is proper to do so." "All right," I said, our dear Mark Prophet replied. Now to summarize, as the rose is nicely open, you see, we can drop something into it. You can learn about self-correction, as with our dear Aesop did. That's where he brought forth this victory, to be able to just write and put down beautiful decrees. He says the openness of the rose will accept it. And what we are doing is trying to get you to accept your own God-given grace of a majestic sense of victory. And as our dear Mark Prophet continues in this lecture, it's pearl of wisdom. Please stop this silly business of thinking that you are inferior to any other person in the universe. You're never going to be anyone else but yourself. Therefore, you have to deal with the reality of who you are. Remember that every ascended master and cosmic being at one time or the other has stood right where you stand in your evolutionary development. And this runs the gamut. So what they did in developing a majestic sense of victory, of God victory for themselves, was one of the greatest essentials in life. The cure-all for all complexes. Do you see what I mean? You have got to get that majestic sense of victory and fix it so much in your mind. That is the cure-all for your inferiority and superiority complexes. Your life is not whimsical. You are going to get better because you, when one determines to develop a majestic sense of victory in your own consciousness, and because God is your victory, God is my victory, if you will understand that and keep pestering the Lord as the widow pestered the unjust judge, you will sooner or later have him on your side, because he'll get tired of you bothering him, because he's in you. Don't you see? He's in you. And the God in you will get tired of being pestered. He knows what you want. Our dear Father knows what you want by now. And he will say, look, lest this woman, lest this man, lest this child worry me. I will give them what they want. I will give her what she wants. By that time, your subconscious mind will finally understand that you want your victory. You want the majestic sense of victory because it is a key to your total victory. If you don't have the sense of it, if you're looking to outer conditions or outer people, persons, places, conditions, or things, and you think you're going to get your happiness and your God victory out of these things, then you're never going to have it. End of quote of this pearl of wisdom this time. Now I would like to share a story, one of Aesop's fable. And I was asked to do this story for a group of people I was working with in North Carolina, working with the hurricane cleanup crew, the many beautiful groups down there and the wonderful. And after we had finished our work for the day, we just were sitting around, and we thought, after we stacked, put away our tools and stacked all the wood, and bringing everything together, I was asked to do this story, and it's called The Crow and the Water Pitcher. Now, this story concerns a thirsty crow that comes upon a pitcher of water. And at the bottom, the water is way at the bottom, way beyond the reach of the crow's beak. And after failing to push it over a couple times, the bird thought for a while, how can I get the water to rise? Oh, what am I going to do? I've got to get it. It's so hot and the sun is unbearable. Then the bird saw a few pebbles beside the pitcher, and he picked them up with his beak, one by one. And when he put one in, it had the water risen higher. And so he put another one in, and the water rose higher. And then he even flew a little farther aside, found a little bit larger ones, a little heavier in his beak, and he put it in the pitcher. And finally, the the water rose up a bit. And then the bird was able to get a nice, cool drink of water that rose to the top of the pitcher, allowing it to drink and to survive. And the moral of the story is the virtue of ingenuity. The thoughtfulness, that thoughtfulness is superior to brute strength, and also gives the crows persistence. Necessity is the mother of invention. And in the Proverbs, where there's a will, there's a way. And in North Carolina, I was asked to share that story. The group of people that I'd been put together with, and we hadn't known each other, and we were sitting around and just taking a break. And they asked me to tell a story. If somebody says, tell a story, I'll tell a story. And this is just such a victorious story because there's been so many victories that have happened in North Carolina, the rebuilding, the victory there that has occurred. And recently we put up insulation around trailers and homes for keeping out the winter's cold. And also the stacking of the wood that has to be taken to be kiln dried so that it gives off more heat in the wintertime as they're experiencing now. And through this spirit and the willingness of telling this story, I could sense the sense of victory, the victory of Linello being so close with us, being with us, band of strangers, and we were so bonded. All these people that have come from all over the parts of the United States have answered the call. All who have been praying for the rebuilding. This whole valley was just uplifted. And so many victories have taken place. Many testimonies of utter sheer miracles have taken place. Brings to all a new sense of abundance, all those who have been afflicted by this area. And all who are being blessed by the hands working very harmoniously and joyfully through this physical endurance that is happening right now, up steep vertical hills. And oh, it is so wonderful to see the people gather together through any way means through the mass media, collecting, delivering them to the homes, to the shut-ins, to the people that would never be able to attain them. They've lost everything. And the use of bringing hot tents where we can use the wood stoves inside heavy military tents. And this was a very, very, very much sense of victory. How each log that we assembled was taken with care and blessedness and helpfulness to bring warmth to those in need throughout the North Carolina community, in Tennessee, and communities also in Georgia here. So all this has been multiplied by the essence of rebuilding. People from all walks of faith have come together, overcoming grand challenges. It has been only through prayer where people band together before a project and after, and we pray from all walks of faith. They come. We've had the talented Amish carpenters come working, teaching individuals from near and far how to construct tiny homes where their homes have been totally washed away in this hurricane, in this flooding. And also for the people to stay safe and warm. In Exodus, in the scriptures, Exodus chapter 17, verse 11, 13. As long as Moses held up the staff in his hand, the Israelites had the advantage. But whenever he dropped his hand, the Amalekites gained their advantage. As Moses held up his staff and men held his arms high above the water of the Red Sea from engulfing and causing the demise of the enslaved Hebrew people, escaping poverty. So they were able to work with the ascended masters and with the humbleness of hearts, giving those to serve without limits. So to be used in this profound understanding of the mystery, of the victory, of the majestic sense of victory, in understanding the Shakib feminine principle of God, is always the active portion of God. And in quiet, humble ways, you can literally move mountains. And our dear Mark Prophet, he challenges us to practice and to give the majestic sense of victory for 1 year, for over time. And we've completed our karmic board letters. And I hope now you can look back and see where many victories have come about. And in writing your new ones, you have a new slate. So as we give thanks to our beloved Linello, we know that much victory comes to us. And then we bother and pester, and we keep our subconscious mind on the beam of victory. We know that we will not react to different things where people cause us to feel little or small. If they say, "What do you want?" or "Why are you here?" So we have to be aware of these little signals that tell us to let that thermometer go downward. So in closing with this wonderful pearl of wisdom, we would like to just give so much thanks to our dear Linello, that in the closing of this pearl of wisdom, our dear Mark Prophet, he told the participants, and I quote, "As I look at you now, I don't see your auras at all. I only see your holy Christ selves around you, and you all look like magnificent saints. You all look like magnificent beings of light, beautiful sight, beautiful saints. And I see your God presence coming down all around you with light, 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 light everywhere." And our dear Linello, our dear Mark Prophet says to himself, they're all developing a majestic sense of victory. Oh, dear Linello, oh, dear Linello, oh, dear Linello, we are so thankful for this message, for all of the light, for all of that you have brought forth to us. We give thanks so much, and we see the light. We will develop the light. We will take all of you have the writings that you have brought forth with the decrees and the teachings. We will be the persistent widow who brings forth that majestic sense of victory and bothers the Lord. And according to God's holy will, let it be done. Or it be sealed according to God's holy will. Amen, amen, and amen.